Special counsel Jack Smith is now recommending the trial in the January 6 case begin on January 2nd, 2024. The move comes as former President Trump and his longtime aide, Walt Nauta, pleaded not guilty to additional charges in the classified documents case. Trump did not appear in federal court in Florida today to enter that plea. His two co-defendants did show up. Amid Trump's legal troubles, officials are receiving threats. FBI agents shot and killed an armed man who allegedly made violent social media posts about President Biden. That happened yesterday. And Fulton County DA Fani Willis down in Georgia has received threatening emails ahead of her possible indictment of Trump in Georgia. For more on all of these stories, Nicole Killian and David French join us now. Nicole is a CBS News congressional correspondent, and David is an opinion columnist for the New York Times. Nicole, let's begin with a discussion of Georgia. The DA down there, Fani Willis, what a decision she has in the coming days, whether to charge a former president of the United States for pressuring election officials in the days after the 2020 election. But ahead of that charging decision, she's facing her own political fire from former President Trump and his allies. Let's watch an ad that just went up.
Biden's newest lackey, Atlanta DA Fani Willis. So incompetent, on her watch, violent crimes have exploded.
When you see that ad from the Trump campaign, and then you look at your own reporting on what's happening in Georgia, tell me, Nicole, about what's the atmosphere in Georgia ahead of this decision on whether to charge Trump or not?
Well, it certainly has changed the game from a political and legal standpoint. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't think of a time, normally when we see campaign ads like this, they're going after political rivals, not prosecutors. So that is a change in strategy, certainly on the part of the former president, really in terms of potentially trying to taint the jury pool there in Georgia. And I think that's why we saw such a forceful response from the district attorney in a notice that she sent out to her staff, calling this ad derogatory and false, and also instructing her staff not to respond in any form to these kinds of charges, and saying as well, reaffirming that she continues to get threats. I mean, she says that, again, these are derogatory and false charges, but she also kind of defended her role, that she is going to continue to follow the law, that this is not personal, this is about business. So certainly she is not intimidated by this ad, other threats that she has received. She is continuing to do her job. And I think also that is why you're seeing such a strong security presence outside of the courthouse. I mean, if you think about it, we have seen some type of security for the better part of 2 weeks now. So this is something that not only the district attorney is taking seriously, but certainly law enforcement there in Georgia. We know the sheriff has said that they have received dozens of threats, and not just to the district attorney, but to county officials writ large. And so that explains part of that security presence as we prepare for this possible charging decision to come down, which could be in a matter of days.
Just a matter of days, David, there could be 4 indictments facing former President Donald Trump, the Republican frontrunner. In your opinion, what does that mean for the national political scene?
Well, I mean, I think that we don't have to speculate very much, that as of now, there's zero indication that the indictments are hurting Trump in the GOP primary electorate. If anything, all the evidence points to the idea that the indictments are helping Trump in the GOP primary. So over the short to medium term, it appears that the indictments are not going to dent Trump's popularity with Republicans at all, and in fact may well help him secure the nomination. That we saw that the special counsel is seeking a January trial date for the January 6th indictment. That's going to be right before the trial then would be taking place during the Iowa caucuses, maybe even moving into the Nevada primary, for example. And in that circumstance, the best guess is that that's going to boost him in these crucial early states, which is a terrible thing to say. I mean, the indictment is credible, the indictment is powerful, and it will boost him. That's a terrible thing to say, but it's also the political reality.
David, when you say it's going to boost him, you've been tracking conservative politics for many years. Why do you believe it's going to boost him? Help me understand how you see that dynamic.
Well, he has very effectively sold the idea, and with the willing assist of sort of the right-wing infotainment media world, the idea that all of this is a political attack, that none of this is a credible legal case. None of these cases are credible legal cases. All of these are political attacks by people that right-wing media and Trump have primed to believe that sort of all of the system is stacked against Trump. That the story of Donald Trump is not a story of a corrupt president and a corrupt person, but the story of a courageous president who's been subject to persecution. And so therefore they cast this and have successfully cast this as just more persecution.
Nicole, help us understand exactly how this could play out next week. I followed this as a reporter, but even I'm confused at times. There was a special grand jury investigation that investigated all of what former President Trump did with his allies like Rudy Giuliani. This went on for a long period. They wrote a report and they filed the report. Now you're saying a grand jury that's new, a different grand jury is going to be convened and then charges brought. Does that mean it goes immediately to trial, or is there a new investigation on top of this so-called special grand jury?
So what we're talking about, there are two different types of grand juries. That special purpose grand jury that you referenced was strictly an investigative body. So to make it analogous to what we covered with the January 6th hearings, I mean, it was similar in nature, right? Where you're bringing in witnesses. This is really just a body designed to investigate. And so that's why they came out with a report. We do know that they potentially recommended indictments of multiple people, suggested perjury charges that some of the witnesses should face, whether or not the prosecutor hews to that remains to be seen. But now, in this final phase of the investigation, the district attorney will be taking that evidence, including some of these findings by the special purpose grand jury, putting it before a regular grand jury, which will analyze this evidence to determine whether or not there should be an indictment. That is really their sole purpose. And so it's not the district attorney's decision, right? I mean, she's going to present this evidence, and it's up to the jury to return this true bill or to not. And then we will know whether or not the former president and potentially some of his allies will be indicted.
But quickly, we hear that a grand jury, this new grand jury, will convene next week in Fulton County.
That's correct. And so, again, not a trial jury, just a regular grand jury. They are strictly there to decide whether or not to indict the former president, which is a heavy charge. And again, another reason why we have seen a lot of security around the courthouse as of late. And of course, if he is indicted, then we would move forward with that legal process where the former president could potentially be arraigned, a trial date would be set, et cetera.
And David French, very quickly, we have to get out of here, but I want your take. Who else besides Trump could break through in the coming month or two with the first debate? Who are you watching?
I'm really not watching anyone in particular. There's no real candidate that's emerging. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy, by a poll today, has now moved ahead of Trump, moved ahead of DeSantis, but he seems as if he's purely Trumpist. So it's very difficult to see anyone breaking out, to be honest.
Well, we'll keep an eye on your column in the New York Times. Nicole Killion and David French, thank you. We appreciate it.